Welcome to Coastal Front. Join us each week as we sit down with the movers and shakers of Vancouver to discuss stories of business, politics, accomplishment, and failure. Our aim is to keep you dialed into what matters most in our city. Now, here's your host, Andrew Johns.
Great. Here we are with Leigh Kenny. You are the candidate for the NDP for Vancouver Quadra.
That's right.
Right where in my own riding. So you're one of the people I've got to think about potentially voting for.
That's
on
right.
October 21st. Thanks for coming today.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're great to have you here. So is this your first stint into politics?
It is.
It is? Okay.
And it's a very steep learning curve, but it's been good. So.
Okay. What got you here? How did you become the candidate for the NDP for Vancouver Quadra?
Well, the actual, I guess, journey to become the candidate started probably about back in February. My husband and I were just driving somewhere. I was driving and we were talking about the upcoming election and he's like, oh, I wonder who our candidates are. And so he looked it up. And at the time, the only candidate for our riding was the incumbent for the Liberal Party, Joyce Murray. And he's like, oh, no, that's not acceptable. So then he actually emailed all of the riding associations within Quadra. So for Conservative, Green, NDP, everybody. Okay. And the NDP was the only one that actually got back to him. And they said, we don't have anybody right now. Do you want to be, or do you want to consider being our candidate? He's actually an active service member in the Canadian Armed Forces. So
your husband is?
My husband is.
Wow.
So because of that, he actually can't be in sort of publicly political.
Okay.
So he's unable to run as a candidate because of his service. So he replied that no, he couldn't, but that his wife might be interested. And so he CC'd me on this email. And so then the next thing I know, I've got the prospective candidate package in my inbox. And they actually kept following up with me. Okay. Because I took a while to ponder it and check into what the platforms were. So basically just kind of doing the research and a bit of soul searching, and that's how I came to be the candidate. I received the nomination from the Riding Association, and here we are.
Okay.
But I guess what intrigued me just generally with the political stuff was, I mean, I've been a voter for about 20 odd years, and in that time I've seen Conservative majorities, I've seen Liberal majorities. It's just this back and forth between the two. And I've always been left feeling I'm not heard.
Right.
My concerns aren't listened to. I've got friends who feel the same way, family who feels the same way. I mean, these are, they are just sort of your average Canadian.
Hardworking Canadians without a voice.
That's right. And it's like, well, I can either complain about it, the great Canadian pastime, complaining about politics, or maybe I could do something about it. Yeah. So that was kind of my jumping off point in deciding, okay, I'm going to do this, whether I wanted to or not. It's like, well, I'm not happy, so maybe I should do something about it.
Yeah, be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So that's kind of how I got here.
Okay.
And why I'm running is because I just really didn't feel heard.
Okay.
And the Liberals and the Conservatives had 20 years to win my vote, and they've not.
They haven't delivered.
No, they haven't.
Okay, well let's dive into some of the issues. Look, there's going to be people listening to this podcast who are hopefully, they're interested. They want to learn more because they want to make an informed vote.
Right.
There's always going to be people who vote for a party, regardless of who their local constituent is. I hope that more people will get involved in understanding who their local constituent is. Like myself, because I think it's really important. Now, of course, you're running against Joyce Murray. She's been the incumbent for many years.
That's right.
And she even is the
President of the Treasury, I think is the title.
So she's got I think a cabinet position or pseudo cabinet position.
Yeah.
She's well respected within the Liberal Party. What are you going to bring to the table that's different than Joyce? What are you going to bring to the constituents of Vancouver Quadra? Just as you're about to answer that, let's just quickly pull up the map here so we can get a sense for people to see. So Vancouver Quadra is a very big area. I mean, we're talking the entire Southlands, Musqueam. We've got all of UBC, right in the heart of Dunbar, all of Point Grey, and pretty much most of Kitsilano as well. I mean, you got a lot, there's a lot of people
I think there's about 60 to 70,000 people that lives within the riding. So it's huge.
And a big mix. You've got people who are students. Mm-hmm. You've got people who are renters. Yeah. People like you and your husband and from military families. Yeah. You've got very wealthy people, and you've got very people on the other end of the wealth spectrum as well, I'm sure. So you got a lot of area to cover. So going back to my question. Yes. So you're up against this, this behemoth Joyce Murray and the behemoth Liberal Party. Right. What are you bringing to the table that you want voters to know about that's different than her?
I think the biggest thing that I bring that is different is that basically my ambition begins and ends with being the voice and serving the people of Vancouver Quadra. Okay. I'm not looking for a cabinet position. I'm not looking to make a name for myself. I know that this is me serving my community, not my community serving me. Right. And I think I bring a really just a common sense voice to the area, because I mean, I've served in the military as well. I've worked in different areas of civil service within governments. I've worked in the private sector. I've been a stay-at-home parent the last 5 years. So I think I've got a pretty good mix of what a lot of people experience in their own lives. Mm-hmm. And, we've been there where, it's we're looking at the best things for education for our kids. We're looking at different concerns about rent. I mean, we live on the Jericho lands. Right. Up until 2 weeks ago, we were only going to be able to stay in our home until next year. That's been extended, so we're happy about that. Oh, good for you. Okay. But, we had that uncertainty hanging over our heads for the last 2 years since we've been here, basically. Right. So we've got that concern about sort of that flux of rental issues. Yeah. We can't afford to buy a house here. Yeah. We lived in other we've lived in other provinces. Yeah.
Where else have you lived?
We've lived in Ontario. We've lived in Alberta. We've lived in New Brunswick. And this
has got to be the most expensive place you've lived.
It is. Yeah. Like there is. I mean.
So let's let's jump into that topic, because housing, it seems to be something that almost everybody talks about. Yep. If you live in Vancouver, whether you can afford one or not, it's about, like, it's almost as common as talking about the weather. Right. What do you propose? What do you want to bring to the people of Vancouver Quadra from a housing affordability perspective? What do you think is important that's not being addressed by the government today? Well, the federal government got out of public housing 22 years ago, whatever it was. So what the NDP are proposing is to get back into it. So the party proposes that within the first 10 years of an NDP mandate, 500,000 units of affordable quality housing would be built. So what I would be doing for Quadra specifically is fighting for the share of that. Okay. Now I know, Jericho lands at some point will be developed. I don't know much about it other than what the general public knows. Yeah. But that's 90 acres. That's a huge piece of land. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of housing units that are going to be able to be built there. Yeah. And a part of those will be affordable housing. Okay. Now, whether that's co-ops, whether that's social housing, whether that's low income, there's going to be a mix of it. But basically, what I would be bringing is I would be fighting for Quadra's share of that affordable housing to be here, so that families, seniors, students, just the everyday person would be able to live affordably in the riding without, having to pay, more than half of their take-home salary, which is huge. Yeah. So that's kind of what I would be bringing in terms of the housing. The actual numbers, the sort of the minutia on when does it start, when does the ground get broken. I think a lot of that's still to be determined. I think sort of at the federal level, there is actually an established plan, and I believe the costing has gone through the parliamentary budget office for the housing platform for the NDP. Yeah. But how it actually breaks down, I
don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
But Quadra would be getting some of it.
Okay. And you're saying that there used to be a national plan of this nature before?
There was. Yeah. And then I believe it was the Liberal Party in 1992 or 1993 canceled it.
Okay.
So since then, we have lost 500,000 units of affordable housing throughout Canada.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So...
what's happened to those? Why? What do you mean when they were lost? They just got redeveloped and
sold off,
and just over time attrition and just
Yep, not taken care of. The land was sold. Developers came in, but that's across Canada.
Yeah.
So it's not just specific to Vancouver.
Has there been any? Look, the BC NDP obviously are in power today. They're very big on affordable housing and addressing these issues. Is there any? And obviously they're the same names, but they aren't the same political party exactly. I mean, they're
not exactly, no.
I mean, they are distinctly different. But has there been any dialogue between the federal NDP, as far as you know, and the provincial NDP that might be able to work together?
Has, but it would the housing platform would be a collaborative effort between both or all of the federal government, the provincial governments, and then municipal governments as well.
Yeah.
What dialogue has happened thus far, I'm unfortunately not privy to that,
yeah.
But I know it's happened, and I know both the city and the provincial government are very keen on trying to get this affordable housing in. In relation to the housing, there's also sort of another component that the NDP platform, the federal platform has, which is the money laundering.
Okay.
Component to it. So last week, Jagmeet Singh announced that there was going to be a special commission raised on day one, I believe, of an NDP mandate, with $20 million going into raising that task force, half of it going to BC to tackling the money laundering issue.
Right.
Because that and the speculation in the real estate, that's a big factor of what drives the cost of housing up. So closing sort of tax loopholes and getting rid of that real estate speculation, and then establishing a nationwide property registry like the NDP government provincially has established.
Okay. Will
help to sort of get rid of those sort of criminal elements that we see when it comes to the speculation and the...
Sure. And then do you believe that would all be quite helpful?
I think so, because the provincial government has already seen some really great progress with their property registry that they've done provincially. But a problem is that, these properties can be registered in numbered companies, which can then just go to another province and register there. So this national property registry would then would stop these numbered companies from going from one province to another.
Yeah, and layers of...
so it's just a way to try and sort of close off loopholes, provide more transparency, and then they would also implement an additional foreign buyers tax on top of that, which would be for people who have no ties to Canada.
Right.
So, not permanent residents, not citizens, not people who have made Canada their home. Yeah. It would just be literally for foreign buyers who are just coming here to buy the property.
So the NDP announced that as well, did they?
Yeah, that was last week, I believe.
Did they say how much that was? That foreign?
The tax?
Yeah.
The numbers are 15 and 20. Yeah. I know the provincial one is one. I might be flipping the numbers in my head.
I think provincial is actually 30 now or 20.
Yeah, I think it was another.
It was 15. It's now 20.
Okay, so then the federal one would be an additional 15.
15.
I always flip the numbers in my head.
Okay, so this is interesting. So look, I voted for Joyce Murray in the last election,
right.
And I voted largely because I was inspired by Justin Trudeau.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be voting for Justin Trudeau. I'm not inspired by him anymore. But what's interesting is, let's assume that I'm someone who's kind of left-leaning, progressive, and I want to consider the other party options other than the Liberals.
Right.
So let's assume I'm not going to be looking at Conservative, I'm not going to look at PPC. So I'm looking at basically yourselves, the NDP and the Green Party.
Right.
Now, last week, Justin Trudeau announced that the Liberals are also intending on implementing a 10% foreign buyers tax.
Okay.
It seems like a lot of times you get a policy from like the Liberals and the NDP announce almost an identical policy within the same time frame, and vice versa. I'm not suggesting that one party tends to copy the other, but like, how do we differ? You know, if I'm a progressive left-leaning voter and
Right.
I'm really on the fence about whether I want to vote for the Liberal Party versus the Greens versus the NDP,
Right.
can you speak to, you know, like, I'm a voter in Vancouver Quadra.
Yeah.
What differentiate either your party or you? Because that, for example, like, I think it's neat, but look, the NDP or the Liberals are also proposing the same idea. Numbers are slightly different, but they're also proposing a foreign buyer's tax. So what really differentiates you or the NDP or both? I'll open that up for you.
I guess the first part of that and the biggest part is the Liberal Party has shown that they're not going to keep their promises.
Right.
I mean, you know, how many promises did they make in the last election that they just have not kept? Proportional representation, that didn't happen. Justin Trudeau said that the 2015 election was the last first past the post election.
Yes, that's true.
Pipeline.
Yeah.
He said we'd get rid of it, and then he went and bought it.
Right.
What else? He said he would bring in childcare benefits for families. Didn't happen. You know, so I guess the difference is they've shown they're not going to keep their promises.
Right.
You know, we've got that. You know, pick a topic.
Yeah.
You know, they probably haven't kept their promise.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other thing is so yes, they've actually come out with a lot of very similar platform proposals, but most of them are usually after the NDP have announced them.
Really?
So it's kind of funny. And actually, the Liberals, I think, came out with their universal pharmacare plan.
Yes,
a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly.
But you guys have been touting that for
a long time,
many months.
Yeah,
yeah.
But now the Liberals have essentially abandoned that. The pharmacare plan. They just basically it changed to something like, we will take steps towards implementing a pharmacare plan. So it changed from, yes, we're going to have it, to a couple of days later, well, we're going to take really good steps to getting towards that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
We've heard this before. So I think that's sort of the big difference between the Liberals and what the NDP are offering, is because Jagmeet Singh, as the head of the party, has said, no, we're not doing this. We're not going to, play favorites with corporate entities. We're not going to, play favorites with lobbyists and that sort of thing. We are doing this for the people of Canada, not, the sort of top wealthiest companies and corporations. And he's going to follow through on that.
Okay.
So those would be the big sort of differences for sure.
Okay. Well, you touched on one subject that I definitely wanted to talk about today, which was pipeline.
Right.
Because that's also a big issue in our kind of neighborhood, if we want to call it that.
Yep.
So you've got Joyce Murray,
yes,
who came out saying that she was essentially against the expansion of TMX pipeline, or the Trans Mountain pipeline. This is going back quite a few years ago. Mm-hmm. It's on record with a tweet that she put out. Then the Liberal Party, as you pointed out, bought a pipeline.
Yeah.
And she's been relatively silent on this, and it seems a bit odd. And I suspect she's a bit of a rock in a hard place, because she probably knows that her local constituents probably want to hear her say, I'm against this thing. But if she speaks up against it, she's speaking up against the party line. Mm-hmm.
And that's the impression I get too, is that she is kind of stuck in a hard place.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you're going for this. You're trying to become elected in Vancouver Quadra and unseat a very incumbent Liberal candidate. Mm-hmm. Pipeline's a big issue.
Yep.
What do you want to say about that?
Well, what the NDP are looking to do day one is to remove the oil and gas subsidies from that industry as a whole, taking that money back, reinvesting it into greener technologies, and to retrain our oil and gas workers to then be on the forefront of these new industries. With the pipeline, it's bought. We're kind of stuck with it for the time being. But if the subsidies are no longer there, if the workers are leaving and going to different areas because that's where the money is, that's where the subsidies are going, and that's where the technology is going, it's going to go away. We're going to move away from our dependence on oil and gas as a whole, fossil fuels as a whole, and it's just not going to be used is what's going to happen in the end. And we're going to do this very quickly. We're going to start to see these changes quickly once we pull these subsidies out of these oil and gas industries.
Okay. So if you were elected as the MP for Vancouver Quadra, would you vote against an expansion of that pipeline?
Of course.
Good. Okay.
Because nobody, I don't know of anybody who was really happy. I mean, I know there are some very passionate opinions on both sides of the pipeline issue.
Sure.
But the way the world is going, the fossil fuel industries are going the way of the dodo, so to speak. You know, that's not the way that the world is going.
Yeah.
There's a lot of creativity and ingenuity in Canada with the people here. And I think if we gave those people the opportunity to bring their ideas to the forefront and to the market, we could be one of the leaders in green technologies.
Yeah.
And so I think, that's the way we need to go. And that's what the NDP are proposing to do, is to I guess, not radically change, but radically change how we do things and get it away from sort of a fossil fuel based industry.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, that's great. Thanks, Leigh. Okay, let's talk about money for a moment. There's obviously with this, what I've noticed as a voter is there seems to be a lot of programs being announced by all the different parties. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. But these all come at a cost.
That's right.
Now, the Liberal Party said that they would balance the budget, I think, by 2019, and they blew past that, and they've now announced enough to basically take us up to another $100 million of deficits between now and the next election, with no sign at all of balancing a budget. Now, I don't know how your family runs their books, but I know my family, at some point, you gotta face the reality that you can't just keep getting more and more in debt.
Right.
That's my view. So maybe others have a different view. But can you comment on, what is the NDP's position? What's your position on that? There's a lot of great programs, but they're going to cost a lot of money.
Well, you said, how does your family pay for things? Well, if the bank account is empty, then we don't spend. But basically how the NDP plans on paying for all of this stuff is kind of a couple ways. So the first way, like with the pharmacare, there's the negotiating power of bulk buying.
Yes.
So if the government goes to these pharmaceutical companies and has the ability to negotiate the cost of medications, and buy them in bulk, that can drive the cost of the medications down. So there's a lot of cost savings there.
And that's definitely true. If you look at the cost for medication, we got Americans coming up here
to buy.
In fact, Donald Trump opened that up. He said, he basically lifted all tariffs so that Americans could come to Canada, buy the drugs that they pay a fortune for down in the States.
Yeah, insulin I think was a big one for diabetics.
Yeah.
So that's part of it is getting the cost of the medication down by the bulk buying. The other part of it is there's the super wealth tax, which the NDP are planning on implementing. And that's not specific to the pharmacare plan, but basically anybody with $20 million in personal assets or over $20 million would pay 1% on that.
Out of interest, is that 1% one time or is that 1% annually?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay.
But with implementing it, the projection is that's $7 billion $7 billion right there.
Right.
And then the other part of it is just using the money we've already got a lot better.
Sure.
Because we're already generating a lot of money in taxes and fees and whatever else we're getting. That's at the disposal of the federal government to spend. So it's just using the money wiser. When it comes to healthcare, healthcare is one of our largest expenditures.
Yeah.
And with the pharmacare plan, because we've got a lot of people right now who aren't taking medication that they need to, or they're only taking half. Like people are, cutting their medication in half and only taking half of what they need.
And that's because of affordability issues?
That's right. A lot of people are, they don't have employer benefits, or they don't have 100% employer benefits and they can't afford the remainder that they have to pay out of pocket.
And some of these drugs are very expensive.
They are.
Yeah.
Some of them are very expensive.
Yeah.
So what's happening is then people are getting really sick and they're ending up in the hospital. And those are huge expenses.
Right.
So if we are getting universal pharmacare in place and people are taking the medication that they need to at the right dosage, as prescribed by their doctor, they're not going to get as sick. They're going to get, depending on what the issue is, they're going to get well, or they're not going to get sick. They're not going to end up in the hospital, and there's going to be better health outcomes overall. So what we're going to see then is we're going to see less stress on our healthcare professionals, and we're going to see a lowering cost of our healthcare overall.
Okay.
So when you take all of these sort of components and add them in, that's how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
It's just using our money smarter.
Do you think the NDP would eventually, if they were governing the country, would eventually be able to turn manage the budget so that we don't go into a deficit?
That would be fantastic. But
has there been any position by the NDP on that one?
You know what? I'm going to have to plead ignorance on this one.
I don't know either, actually. I've done my research. Sorry.
There's been so much reading and so much going on that unfortunately I haven't looked at everything. It's all stuff and part of this learning curve I'm in.
See, this is why I think it's even more important that voters get to know who their constituents are, because look, unless you are Joyce and you've been involved and this is your full-time gig for many years, you're probably not going to know all this stuff. I wouldn't expect you to. I know I wouldn't. I don't. And besides, you can look up these policies and these national positions on every website.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I think it's so important that, like, if you are indifferent between the kind of views of the Liberals versus the NDP, then it should come down to the constituent and say, like, okay, who do I like more? Who do I trust more? Who do I think is going to represent me more better? Is it going to be Leigh or is it going to be Joyce? Let's quickly jump to the that Wikipedia page over the last election. I just want to quickly take a look at something here. Now, we can see that Joyce has been in this role since 2008.
Right.
We've only ever had a conservative or liberal candidate in Vancouver Quadra. And in fact, the last time we even had anything other than a liberal was back in 1984 when I was 10 years old. So, and then it's just, Ross, if you want to scroll down for a sec, you can see the results of the last election. Joyce had 58% of the vote. Next best after that was a conservative at 25%. Now, I got to think that some of that 58% of the vote, of those 31,102 votes, I can tell you 2 of them were myself and my wife. Who voted for Joyce because we were inspired by Justin Trudeau. Yeah. Those are not going back to their party again. Sorry, Joyce. But my question to you is, that's a big, like, you look at this Scott Andrews, he got 10% of the vote. Yeah. What is it that makes people want to, in this huge riding of Vancouver Quadra? I mean, at 60%, you're not just getting the students. No. You're not just getting the people the millennials that are professionals living in Kitsilano. Right. You're not just getting the wealthy folks over at West Point Grey and Dunbar. Mm-hmm. You're getting a lot. You're getting all of them. Yep. Almost. I mean, 60%. What do you think it is that makes people want to vote for Joyce year after year? And you scroll down, Ross, sorry, before you answer that question, Leigh, look at this. You can see here 42% of the vote in the previous. Go up a little bit. Sorry, that was 2011. You see there's 2011. Yeah, 42%. Yeah. 2008, 45%. I mean, I'm excited for you, and I'm hopeful for you, but this is an uphill battle. What do you think is going on here?
You know what? I honestly think a lot of it has to do with familiarity.
Okay.
Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yep. Familiarity. Yep.
So yeah, the constituency as a whole has been Liberal since the early 80s.
Yes.
And then Joyce has been in that position since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Change is hard. Change is very, very hard. And it's difficult, I think, for people to imagine something different because it's scary. It's like, it's the unknown.
Right.
What's this unknown factor, this unknown party, this unknown person? How are they going to do? So I think that could be a very, very big part of it. It's just, we're going with what we know,
right.
devil we know, devil versus the devil we don't know, sort of thing. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think what might be different in this election is I get a sense that people are now looking for change.
Right.
Even going back to, 2015, when it was all, bad Harper, we got to get rid of him.
People were looking for change.
Well, but I sense that it's a much stronger, there's much more conviction
right.
with sort of that need for change. And I think people are willing to sort of take that risk. I get the sense that it's like, okay, we need to do something different this time.
Yeah. Which isn't going back to the Conservative Party. Because that's not much of a change. I mean, that's just going back and forth. But
well, and I said I was at the West Point Grey Residents Association debate last week.
Yeah.
And I basically said we know what we're going to.
Out of interest, did Joyce show up to that?
She was there. Yes.
Oh, she was. Okay.
Yeah. Because all of the parties were actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these Liberal candidates aren't showing up to these all candidate debates. So it blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's good. Good for her.
Yeah, there's 5 of us running in Quadra, so we were all there.
Okay.
But I basically said, we know what we're going to get with the Liberals. We know what we're going to get with the Conservatives.
Yeah.
So let's try something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's, there's I think a really strong sense that people are looking for something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the greatest advantage I've got is that I do bring something different. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm not a career politician.
Yeah.
I am a housewife right now. I've been a soldier.
Ex-military,
I've been a civil servant, and so I'm just kind of your average person.
I was going to say you're kind of like an everyday Canadian.
Yeah, and I think that's what I bring.
Do you make pancakes?
I do.
Do you eat it with real maple syrup? Mm-hmm. Good for you.
No, I don't bring table syrup into my house.
There we go. Exactly. Wow. So you're out there talking to the community.
Yes.
What are you hearing? I mean, besides the talk, we talked about affordability of housing. We've talked about pipeline. Are there any other things that are coming up that you're kind of hearing a consistent view on that people are kind of, addressing that maybe you're surprised by, or you're just hearing a lot of?
Well, the environmental issues are big for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think the thing that surprised me the most was sort of the spectrum of people. Like, I mean, even seniors are quite concerned about what's happening with sort of the environment, and they're concerned about what happens to our community specifically. And touching back on the pipeline. Okay, well, we've got these oil tankers that are floating by every day.
Yep.
And I mean, what happens if something happens to one of them? Like, I mean, it's a catastrophic thing. I mean, our beaches are gone.
Yeah.
Our shoreline's gone.
Pods of orca whales there was a couple spotted in False Creek this summer.
Yeah,
Amazing.
And harbor seals and the fish, and I mean, there's this whole ecological system that's there that would be devastated.
Yeah.
So those are big issues.
Okay. So you're hearing about the environment a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess my personal sort of interest when it comes to the environmental issues is is more on the individualistic level.
Yeah.
How can we in our homes do better?
Yeah.
And that's something that, my family has been kind of working on over the last few years. I mean, we've got a garden and, I hang the laundry on the line when I can. And my kids hate the towels being hung up. They're like, can you please not hang the towels up? Because they get a little stiff.
Yeah, a little crispy.
So I mean, just, what can we do, in our daily lives?
Yeah,
and
sure. Think globally, act locally.
Yeah.
I
mean,
that philosophy.
we've got such a beautiful corner of the world.
Yeah.
We've got lots of lovely green spaces. We've got, Pacific Spirit Park is one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do we, first of all, preserve what we've got?
Yeah.
And then how do we make it better?
Yeah.
And, and I mean, even just, like with gardening, I find, like it's very satisfying to walk out into the yard, dig up potatoes and carrots, and that's supper.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I mean, I know a lot of people, live in apartments and condos. So how can
That's amazing how many community gardens there are out there too.
Yeah, and I would love to see more.
Yeah.
So how do we get more? How do we get more farmers markets? I mean, there's lots.
Yeah.
But they're always so crowded. It's like, can we not get more? How do we get more? Like these are ideas that I, don't have.
Or have
sort
more
of
frequency because they're only on either Saturdays or Sundays most of the time. And
yeah,
it's
and I mean, I know a
them.
lot of the farmers are coming in from sort of outside, but can we? I know there's a few different initiatives where people will come in and they'll like farm your front yard.
Yep.
Or your backyard.
Yeah.
And then you get a portion of it, but and you don't have to do a thing.
It's creative. Yeah.
So that's kind of where my heart lies is in the sort of those community initiatives, those individual initiatives, and how do we help each other? How do we help our small local mom and pop businesses like the local bakery and the local butcher shop?
Okay, so you're MP for Vancouver Quadra. Poof.
Right.
How are you going to help those local business owners, the bakeries, shops, and that type of thing? What would you do as a MP to help them out?
I think the first place would be to talk to them and see like what are their struggles, and I think off the top of my head, I think one of those struggles is finding staff.
Yes.
It's not necessarily that they can't pay their staff; it's that they can't find anybody at all.
Right.
Because
if you look at, are you familiar with Aphrodite's? The
the pie shop.
Yeah. When they have the restaurant across the street,
they do
take over from that used to be a Greek restaurant. They had a sign. They actually closed. They're now closing at, certain hours or certain days.
Okay.
Because they can't find enough staff to just run their little cafe restaurant.
Right. And I think in large part that's because of housing, because nobody can. Well,
all ties together.
And I mean, it's kind of anecdotal.
Yeah.
These things I'm saying.
Sure.
These are just things I've heard and things people have said to me.
Yeah.
But housing is a big thing. It's like, well, people would love to work there, but they can't afford to live anywhere near there.
Right.
So they're going to find something, some place to work that's a little closer to home.
Yeah.
Which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So I think, if we can get some more affordable housing in, we can get the people into these jobs to help the bakery, the butcher, these small shops. And I think the other thing is we need to, as a community, support these places.
Yeah. I agree.
Go buy.
Fortunately, there's no Walmart in Vancouver Quadra. So.
Well, okay, fair enough. But, if you need shoes, is there a local cobbler? Is there a local,
Yeah. No, look, I totally agree with you. I love supporting local businesses for sure.
Yeah. So I think there's a few different ways that we as a community could support them.
Yeah.
And then, absolutely. Should I be elected? How can I sort of from the federal level,
apply that locally.
Apply that. And I think the biggest thing would be the housing.
Yeah.
Because of get the students in, usually, the Aphrodite's Cafe.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's
a
typical
good student job for sure.
Job,
when you go to school. Yeah.
And I mean, it's not that far from UBC, and there's a lot of students there, but a lot of them are commuting to Surrey, to Delta, because that's where
Really?
they're from. Yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, they just can't afford
Ross,
to live.
Is that true? Like, have you?
Yeah, I know
you
people
got out of
that did
school
that.
recently.
Yeah, and I used to live in Surrey, and like for me going to because now I live in Kitsilano, the prospect of transiting home once a week to go visit my parents is daunting. And the people that are living in Surrey that are doing it, that's like 3 hours a day, 3.5 hours
That's
a
amazing.
day. And they do it because no, you can't, it's expensive. There's no way I could have afforded to pay for my own
But doesn't
school.
UBC have a bunch of? Isn't there student housing, or is there not enough?
There is, but there's not enough. I was actually
every time I
talking.
turn around, they're building a new building
And
out
it's
there,
not,
but
you
it's
still have to pay for it all.
right.
It's not cheap. Like some parents can't afford to pay for their. So how, as a student, are you supposed to take a full course load,
Yeah.
to work a job, pay for rent, and pay for $5,000, $7,000 a year for school?
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
And you still have to have a life too. Like
Right.
that can't be everything.
Yeah. No.
You'll burn
Nice
out
poor
pretty
young
fast.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, I can't even fathom transiting from Surrey every day for school.
No, that's amazing.
But people do it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
And I actually I attended a meet and greet with the graduate studies students at UBC last week.
Okay.
And there was one of these graduate students who was saying there is a waiting list that is 6,000 names long at UBC for the residents.
No way.
That's
Wow.
what I heard. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's anecdotal, I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
sure.
that's something that I heard from one of the graduate students. And
That's incredible.
So I mean, going back to the housing, because UBC is in this riding,
Yeah.
we need to see about like what can we do about that. And I don't know if the university has something on the
Yeah.
table already or in the works.
I did see something recently about these micro units, I think they call them. It's pretty neat.
That's
Actually,
the newest one, I think.
Yeah. Although when I saw it, I'm like, that's just like the dorm room I had. I mean, it's not that, it's the same size.
Yeah.
Just, it's actually way nicer, but they're kind of a neat idea. I think they're kind of, the intent is to have like these Murphy beds that kind of,
Yeah.
they fold up to be a desk, but then you sleep on it and
Yeah. And that, I think that's the most recent one, but, or sort of the newest that
Yeah.
they've got there, but they still don't have enough.
don't have enough.
So, sort of another component specific to Quadra is we need to see about getting more affordable housing for students
Yeah.
closer to school. And then sort of the fallback on that is that also helps free up some of the rentals outside of the university.
Yeah.
So, if we can get the students housed at the university, closer to the university, that kind of takes care of them and their quality of life too.
Sure.
And then, students that are renting sort of on the outside economy, that frees up sort of that space for
Yeah.
others to come in, whether that's other workers, other families, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps to sort of give that balance when it comes to the housing.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, that's good. Ross, was there anything that I didn't ask Leigh that I know we'd asked the other Vancouver Centre candidates? That,
Like the idea of towing the party line.
oh, yes. Thank you for that. Yeah. That's one other thing. And we're trying to make it consistent so that everybody gets the same questions.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of my personal interests because it appears to me that this actually is a really good segue into going back to Joyce Murray. Like, I've never met her in person. I've seen her speak a few times. I think she sounds like a very honest and nice lady. But when it comes to like making a final vote in the House of Commons, it's like your opinion doesn't matter if you're a liberal or conservative. You vote whatever our party's position is. And I think the pipeline's a perfect example of that. Like,
Yeah.
she may have spoken up slightly over it, but at the end of the day, she didn't speak out against it, and she's part of the party that bought a pipeline. Can you comment for me what it's like for the NDP? I mean, I know you haven't served as an NDP MP before, and you're fairly new to politics. But what is your position and your view on the NDP? Do they have a position where you have to go with whatever Jagmeet Singh is saying?
you know what? To be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
But when it comes to, being in Ottawa, voting on, different topics, different resolutions, I know going into this and going to Ottawa that I'm going as the voice of the 60, 70,000 people of Quadra.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing from those people that they want me to speak a certain way on a particular topic, that's how I'm going to do it. Now, I know, thinking back to my lessons of government back in school, I know, there's like the party whip and all this. And to be honest, I'm very unfamiliar with that. That's all something I'm still learning and having to learn. But I know that I would be the voice of those in my constituency, and I'm going to represent those people. I'm not going there to represent my interests. I'm not going there to represent Alberta's interests or anybody else. I'm going for the people who live in this riding. And that's kind of where it sits for me.
Okay, good answer.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to get involved in helping you out, do you have a website, a Facebook account, Twitter? What do you
I've got it all.
Okay.
So
here's this nice picture. Was it?
Yeah, thanks.
Which park is that in the background there?
It's in front of my house.
Oh, it's in front of your house?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Is that a school playground? I don't recognize that.
No,
one.
it's not.
I have young kids too, so I know
that's on the Jericho lands.
Oh, that's on Jericho lands. Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
So the website is leighkenny.ndp.ca.
Okay, let's spell Leigh just for those listeners that maybe listen. So it's
LEIGHKENNY.
Okay.
.ndp.ca.
Okay. And you have a team that's helping you out.
I do.
I've got.
I need volunteers. I've got some really great ones who are amazing and who have done many campaigns and know way more than I do. So whenever something comes up, I just run it by them and they say yes or no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always, I need help.
Yeah.
I don't have a glossy, well-funded campaign. I've had some amazing help.
So if people want to donate, they can just go to your website.
They can go to my website. Do you have any
social media pages?
Yeah, I've got
use
social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
I think the Twitter and the Instagram are Leigh for NDP.
Yeah.
And then Facebook it's a long one. I think it's Leigh Kenny for Vancouver Quadra NDP. It's really long.
I'm sure if you Google, it'll be easy to find. Yeah.
And on the website, like it's got links to all of that. It's got links if you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, if you want a lawn sign. I've got lots of lawn signs. Yeah. Please take one.
Okay.
So that's all on their email, phone, the campaign office.
Good.
We're actually sharing a campaign office with Yvonne Hansen, who's the NDP candidate for Vancouver Granville.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
So where's your office then? Are you kind of
it's
right on the border?
1067 West Broadway.
Okay.
So it's in Granville, but it's not too far outside of the line.
I like it though. That's a good sign of keeping your costs down. That's a very good sign, folks.
Being frugal.
Yeah, exactly. Be frugal.
Using the money we've got in the best way we can.
One of my favorite answers you gave me earlier today was the fact that you said the government's already got a lot of money.
Yeah.
They just need to be better reallocating those the money that they use that they already have, because I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the sort of the smallest government there is, and that's the family, the household.
Yeah.
And if something isn't working, if you're spending too much in one area or whatever, you rework it. Like that's what everybody does in their lives every day.
Yeah.
To make their budgets work.
Yeah.
Why can't government do the same? It's
very refreshing to hear that, Leigh.
Yeah. So no, I'm all for being frugal and using our resources wisely.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, best of luck with this campaign. It's on the 21st of October, so you got
coming up.
22 days left, or 21 days. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, Leigh Kenny for the NDP, Vancouver Quadra.